Good day, it is Stephen Davids here, and in this video I want to show you what is the correct understanding of the term category 3 exempted species. The reason is that there is a lot of wrong understandings about this word, and in my specific case the reason why I make this video is because the municipality of the Oeverstrand in Hermanus, they had a wrong understanding of the term, and this will unfortunately be a blot forever on their name, because the consequence of that was, if you look at this alien invasive, this is a Myoporum montanum. They allowed it to be pruned. They allowed this tree also, in fact, not only to obstruct the pathway, but when they made this pathway, they virtually gave protected status to this tree when they, if you can see here, they made a small cut here to accommodate this alien invasive. This is not a special tree. This is an alien invasive that pollutes the whole area. You can see here a close-up where they made a special cut to accommodate this alien invasive, instead of just cutting it out, because they had an understanding that according to them the category 3 invasive alien allows it to be exempted and therefore virtually protected. In order to understand what is meant by exempt, you must first understand the general thrust and intention and the general motive of NEMBA. Because as soon as you say for someone you are exempt from something, it means you are exempt from something. What is that very something you are being exempted from? You are exempted from walking, you are exempted from sitting, but all the others in general, everything else must be done, and everyone else must do it. So what is the general thrust of NEMBA? If you start at the national strategy for dealing with biological invasions in South Africa, you will see the general thrust of conservation is very specific in regards to aliens. It basically starts here with the framework for biological invasives, and then you say the approach would require, one, that priority be given to preventing the introduction of invasive alien species. In other words, start at the border, keep your borders secure, do not let invasive aliens enter. But, and this is point 2, if a potentially invasive species has been introduced, you can't help it. You see it now. It's against your wishes, but it is now there. What do? It should be eradicated if possible and desirable. If possible and desirable, you must understand this. Maybe it's there in a hilly mountain. It's extremely difficult. You can't get to it. And should be eradicated. And in the event that eradication is not, and it continues then the strategy on page 9, feasible or resources are not available for its eradication. You see what's going on? For its eradication. Eradication is the starting point when you deal with invasive species. The focus on control and eradication. You also see in section 64 of NEMBA, and in section 64 of NEMBA you will see that the purpose of this chapter is to prevent the unauthorized introduction and spread of alien invasive species. As I said, stop everything at the border, and then let me just skip here, to eradicate alien species. If you, after all, it enters and you couldn't help, then you eradicate it. And then here stands to manage and control alien and invasive species. But now what does this control mean? What does that control mean? Does that control now mean something quite different? What is the focus of this control? The focus of this control you will see in the definition section of NEMBA. And in the definition section of NEMBA, it says control in relation to alien or invasive species. Please make sure that that you read control in relation to alien and invasive species, because sometimes, unfortunately, as it happened, the so-called horticulturalists and specialist experts, they just read control but not in relation to alien and invasive species as stand in NEMBA. Control in relation to alien or invasive species means to combat or eradicate. This is a focus on invasive species or where such eradication is not possible. This is the gist, the focus. And if you look at the control, the eradication of those things, you will see that NEMBA does not only focus on species. NEMBA goes further, and in its introduction it says NEMBA is there for the protection of species and ecosystems that warrant national protection. The reason is there is a movement away from so only protecting species or working with species, but focus on the ecosystem where it operates. The focus is not only on species but also on the ecosystem. And if you then look at the broader perspective, you will see that invasive alien species means any species whose establishment and spread outside of its natural distributions range threatens ecosystems. So species are a danger to the broader ecosystem. Now, why does NEMBA have this broad focus on the eradication of ecosystems? And for that, you can just look at the negative effects of ecosystems. In general, those, please be with me. Of course, this may be for a lot of you old news, but I just want to emphasize this. And in terms of the Myoporum montanum, you can have the general thing accounts for a lot of other things. It threatens ecosystems in general. Here by us in the Overberg area, Overstrand area, we're close to Kogelberg. There's a lot of other protected nature reserves and areas. It threatens the national listed critically endangered Overberg sandstone fynbos ecosystem, and it is there at the border of Houston. And of course, you will know a nationally listed critically endangered is the highest form of endangerment that the ecosystem can be listed under. It's like someone in the intensive care, critical care. You just need something slight to die. And we have a dry area here. It reduces the drought resistance of the area, uses a lot of water, and it fuels veld fires here. In Nysna, there was studies done after that big fire, and they showed there that the invasives had a lot of things there. And in terms of the Myoporum montanum, it has a lot of dead wood inside it, although it is lush and green outside. So when it burns, all that wood inside burns very intensively. And this specific plant is poisonous for animals and cattle and sheep, and it is distributed by these small little birds, the seeds. So therefore it goes from area to area, and if there's a farm, it is danger to that. And this plant is also poisonous for humans. The poisonous element is in that is not like a mamba or snake. It immediately kills you. It poisons your body over time, and therefore it is not really possible to immediately take, but that was the problem causing a Terry. So because of all these and other dangers, it depends on your areas, but the focus is, I just use the Myoporum montanum as an example. Depending on the alien invasive, those are some of the general things. But you also and always get exemptions. And the reason for exemptions is we use pine. Pine is and but became part of it is actually invasive. It's an alien. Or the tree can become. It did become part of our culture. I think it's called the oak trees in Stellenbosch. Part of our religion, part of our history. Or some things we just started to eat and become part of us. So you always get exemptions. In fact, exemptions in life is common. You can tell someone, lady, someone stands in a queue, an old lady, you are exempted from what? That is a question. Exempted from what? From standing in the queue, from going stand in another queue, from just walking past people, is exempted from being paid. All laws, in fact, have exemptions. You see for example, the Labor Relations Act have a certain category. If you get paid too much, the Labor Relations Act does not apply to you. So you always get exemptions. The question is, what is meant by exemption, and how do you go about to get exemptions? The way the minister manage and exempt alien invasives is via the alien and invasive species list, which is published every 4 years. And this list has 2 tables. These 2 tables functions together, and the first table is then the generic table, and it provides the first level of the management. To understand this table, let me make an example. Suppose you have a lot of kids, 3 kids, Sipo, John, and maybe Gladys. You can write for each one of them. You can do this. Sipo, in the afternoons you must make the food, you must take out the garbage, you must do your schoolwork. For John you can write a separate letter, and then also for Gladys. But to make things easier for you, you simply then take a table, and in this first column you draw up then all the activities that they possibly can do. Perhaps washing yourself, dressing yourself, making food by yourself, going to shop on your own. In this first column you draw all the activities that they can possibly perform. Then you write their names in other columns, Gladys, Sipo, or whoever. You write their names there, and then all you do is you simply tick off. Cross. You can make food. Okay, Sipo, you can make food. Okay, Gladys, you cannot make food. You're far too young for that. Yeah, the other one, John, you can do it. So you can do another activity, perhaps watching movies over 13. Okay, Sipo, definitely not. You're not that age. Sipo can do things. John, yes, you can definitely do a thing. And then Gladys, okay, you can also do a thing. And this is in the way you have each one's activities, what's allowed and what's not allowed. To return now back to your first table. And here in the first column you have all the possible activities that can be performed in terms of all the aliens. And that is importing them into the Republic. Okay, there's another detailed activity, having them in your possession. Then there's maybe another activity, growing, breeding them, then moving them from one place to the other, then selling them. There's a lot of all these detailed activities, spreading them, releasing them into the nature, transfer them from one catchment area to the other. These are all the possible detailed activities that can be performed by any of these species. Then you go and put the species in categories. Category 1, very simply speaking and oversimplified, are perhaps the very high risks alien invasives that, suppose you have a rugby field full of plants and you do only have one person, where do you start? Then you start with category 1. You can't have them there. They must be immediately be destroyed. There's nothing will be allowed. Then you get perhaps your category 2. In terms of category 2, they are lesser priority, slightly lesser priority. Suppose in this rugby field, what's your second priority? You destroyed and eradicated all the category 1s. Okay, where must you start? Go to category 2. And in category 2, aliens, the thing is, you can have them, but you need a permit. Suppose you go to someone and say for him, I see there is on your property category 2. They must be destroyed. Well, sir, just wait there. I do have a permit. Show me your permit. I've got this special permit. Then you get category 3. You can call category 3 sort of the oddman. And now category 3 is the last category that you pay attention to. But what does this category 3 then entails? And specifically, I'm concerned with the Myoporum montanum, which is then at category 3. And this category 3 then I will discuss now in greater detail. In terms of category 3, you will see that the only activity from all this list of detailed activities, the only activity that is exempted here is having possession. All the other activities are prohibited. Importing them are prohibited. Growing them are prohibited. Conveying and moving them is prohibited. All these, everything is prohibited. Selling, releasing, everything is prohibited. The only thing that is allowed is basically, and that is exempted, is having in possession of. And the reason for this is very simple. In some instances, just having possession of something or having control of something is a crime. For example, hard drugs like cocaine, having a crayfish that is undersized, having a drug like Mandrax or whatever, you are not allowed to have it. You are immediately arrested. It's a crime. But you can't be, and the law is fair here. You can't help it if, for example, the Myoporum montanum is spread by birds. A bird flies over your area, it poos there, the plant grows, you just see it there. No, you are exempted from prosecution. The law is fair, but everything else is prohibited. You must also understand that possession is a very limited concept here. It's not like you possess your car. You can go and drive it. You can give it to someone. You can give it to your child, a family, a friend. You can go everywhere where you want to go. You can do with it what you want because you possess it. No. Possession is here. It's in your control. It's very limited. You can't grow it as you want to. You can't cut it and sell it and move it as you want to. You can't release it, give it. All these other activities are specifically restricted and denied and prohibited. You must also remember that you are only exempted from exercising control over it, from having it. You are not exempted from how you manage it. You must still manage it in terms of NEMBA. And NEMBA says how much you manage invasive species. You must firstly try to eradicate it. You must still do it. You're not being exempted from NEMBA's laws. The NEMBA Act underlines and underpins this regulations. You must also further notice that the fact that you are exempted from having it doesn't mean you have a right to have it. Just think for one moment about it. You come and you clear your plot and area and land from an invasive alien. And next to you is your neighbor. He just go on as he wants to have his invasive aliens there. You will never be able to clear your plot, because every time the wind blows the seed, the birds carry them over. And if that person just say, it is mine, I have a right to have it on my property, where will you end? No one will ever be able to clear it and eradicate it. No, therefore, exemption is only because it is there on your property. You're not being prosecuted. But it doesn't mean you have a right to have that invasive alien. One can ask the question, is NEMBA not a little bit over the tops here by prohibiting everything and just wants the alien invasives to be destroyed? The answer for that you find into NEMBA's definition of invasive species. Invasive species are species that by their definition threatens ecosystems. Now suppose you have, in this case, whatever invasive species you have, in this case Myoporum montanum, it is classified as an invasive alien because the very fact it threatens the ecosystems. Already threatens the ecosystem. Now that one plant or tree, if you allow it to grow, it will multiply on its own. It will get more. And that which is already a danger will just be a greater danger and become a greater threat. And which already threatens the ecosystem will ultimately destroy the ecosystem. So that is the reason why NEMBA is so strict. So it is a fallacy, in conclusion, to think that simply there is an invasive alien, it is exempted, what the municipality sometimes can tell you, it must stand. It is allowed, and sometimes it virtually has a right to stand, like in this case. No, it has no right. It must be eradicated according to the law. There is exemptions where alien invasives are allowed, but then it is further specified in the other table, namely notice number 3. Notice table number 3, that goes a little bit down under, and here's an example of notice number 3, table number 3, and specifically the Myoporum montanum has no further qualifications. It's indicated there as a level 3, category 3, and there's no exemptions given further. But if you go further, for example, to our wonderful pine that we use, it says there, where is it exempted? It's exempted on existing plantation, it's exempted other places. So this is then the deeper level of exemption, the next table that you get in the alien and invasive species list. Thank you very much for watching this video. We love constructive comments and criticism. Please subscribe and please like and share this video.